right, welcome back to the third installment of the NBA team previews and over/under picks. Justin Onken here with Grant Bale.
What's up?
There's some interesting teams tonight. I think this is the sharpest the books have been for like the overall set of teams. I kind of had a little bit harder time finding a third team that I like tonight, but when I dove in, I found one that I definitely like. I think there's one that I really like tonight. Yeah, I think this is a sharp set of teams.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of these teams are hard also with some of the question marks.
There's a lot of question marks, yes.
Right. And I think that makes it harder with some of these lines because when you have so many question marks, well, usually it points me to the underside because many things have to break right. But towards the end, we're going to get interesting with like a team like the Jazz who's proven but yet hasn't really taken that step to past regular season, right? Like they can obviously win now, but can they win after that? But that's all we're really worried about is the first 82 games. We've had some preseason games, which have been fun. The Bulls played unbelievable the other night. They scored like 135 points. We've seen some rookies score, which has been nice. I saw Mobley had a nice little move in that Bulls game and some other handful of guys. So I'm excited. League Pass is going to be fun. And we have a good set of teams coming up, and then we'll have an amazing prop show next week.
Yeah, the preseason stuff is kind of hard to like really take a lot away from it just because so many teams are missing players. They're playing them 20 minutes. But the Bulls scored a lot of points. They looked pretty good. I wasn't quite as high on them. I still think they're going to have some defensive issues and some, ball who gets to dribble the most issues. But, they do have a lot of talent. I think that's why both of us ended up leaning on the over for them ultimately. Yeah, one thing that I do want to mention is we both loved the Nets over. And this Kyrie stuff is getting to the point where I don't think he's going to play, at least in the near future. Seems like he's pretty set on not getting the vaccine, which makes him ineligible to play in his own arena. They play 41 of their 82 games in their home arena. And that was one of the things that I liked about them was that they had the 3 stars, so they could withstand an injury. They had a lot of margin for error. And while I still think they're awesome with Durant and Harden, not having Kyrie changes their margin of error and kind of changes the dynamic of their team. Plus the drama of him being there, not being there. Maybe he gets to play some road games. I think he can play if they go to Madison Square Garden, which makes absolutely no sense because of whatever weird rules there are.
From Brooklyn to Manhattan, yeah.
it's just such a weird situation for them to deal with. I'm probably still going to bet the over because I think that their ceiling is so high. But it's a question mark for me now. I just wanted to bring that up since we both rung their praises a little bit.
Yeah, the hard part is that we always talk about that one injury, right? Now, if you have one injury and he's out, you kind of almost have no chance rather than like actually having a chance with one guy out.
Puts a lot of pressure on that other guy.
Right. And in those two players, where they are in their careers with James Harden and Kevin Durant is that neither of them have much to prove anymore. They're just kind of worried about winning a championship. So
100%. If
they're hurt or have any hint of like, hey, I'm not going to be healthy come playoff time, they're not going to play. That's just kind of how this works. So I also would question that bet unless we somehow get a change. I don't know, maybe halfway through the season we get some sort of lifts on some restrictions. I don't know. I can't speak on COVID vaccine policy at all. So I'd maybe stay away unless you maybe see it drop. I don't know. Maybe the number drops if they start taking less money on it.
Yeah.
But I doubt it. So because there's probably already enough money out there, I guess it'll probably stay pretty flat.
Yeah, I would guess so. Well, let's jump into our 10 teams tonight. First team, Oklahoma City Thunder, 22-50 last year. We had them on the under. I think it was a percentage-based under last year with the weird games, and they came through by losing basically every game for the last month and a half. Shea went out. Horford just didn't play. They traded George Hill. They were playing essentially no good players. They had the 6th pick in the draft, took Josh Giddey. They also took Trey Mann in the first round, brought in Derek Favors. But, ultimately, they're the same team. No Horford, but granted, he didn't play that much. No George Hill, he didn't play that much. and Shea only played like I think 35 games. You were talking the other night.
Yeah, I think Diallo was the only one that really mattered.
And they traded him at the deadline, I think.
Yeah.
So they're mostly the same team. Shea, Dort, Basley, Isaiah Roby, Kenrick Williams, Theo Maledon looked decent as potentially like a backup point guard of the future. He's not probably going to be a starter, but he held his own. Ty Jerome had some really nice games down the stretch, but it's hard to put a lot of stock into those BS games at the end of the season. They lost them all. So I say that, and then I look at their over-unders, 22.5, 23.5, and I have a hard time not taking over because they overachieved so much last year with Shea playing like 35 games that if he plays 60, 70 games this year, and they get good coaching and they see some improvement from, some of these younger guys, like if Maledon is, if he takes a little jump, and if Giddey can help, like they're just well-run organization that wins games because they're well run. And 22.5 games is so little. And this is not something I'm betting. Definitely not. This team has 100 question marks. All their guys are question marks besides Shea, basically. And Dort. We kind of know what Dort is. He's an up and down offensive player who's an unbelievable defensive player, but there's so many question marks that you can't bet it.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit different than you on this. I do have those same questions. My notes that I have written down right here, I promise I haven't touched them. They're literally almost word for word. I said his number is so low. Shea has only played 35 games. Dort and Basley are actually pretty good, and maybe Giddey helps you score. That's exactly what you just said in the last 30 seconds. So
yeah,
I have those questions, but this number is so low, and I think that this team is going to compete. And if you compete in enough games, you're going to have a chance to win. I don't even know what the lowest total. I mean, usually, like if a team's really, really bad, right? You win like 18 games. That's kind
18 or 19 is like the lowest you usually 19. See.
And I don't think that this team is that bad. I actually think Dort is pretty good. And Shea, like 30. I mean, if he plays 30 more games, that's a ton for a team to have their best player for 30 more games. And that's on the low side. He should play more than that. So I like this. This is going to be one of my bets on the over, specifically the 22 number. I think we talked about this earlier. We had a little trouble picking 3 teams out of this group because the numbers are pretty close. I think they'll probably end up around this range, but I think a 24 is pretty realistic for them, and a 22 number is not too bad for me. The only thing I worry about is, the situation we had last year where they almost kind of started losing on purpose. I'm not really sure about the coach. I'm not really sure about when they're going to play guys, and if they're going to play guys every night, and are they going to put the best players out there every single night? I don't know. I can't answer that question truthfully.
Yeah, it's tough.
But I think these guys are going to play. Basley's not too bad. He actually got a lot better last year. He's a tall wing, which I like, athletic. Shea is really, really good. I don't really know what his future is going to be with the Thunder, especially if Giddey's pretty decent. But we'll see. 22 is just, come on, that's so.
They won 22 games last year.
Yeah,
and 10 less games. With us, essentially the same team. I get a little bit from Horford, I guess, but they barely had Shea. I definitely lean over. I think their coach is pretty good. He coached an absolute crap team to some legit wins for the first half of the season. Then they just kind of quit trying. I don't really think that that's an indictment on him.
Yeah.
My thing is you look at their bench, it is random dudes. But those random guys played pretty good for them last year. Ty Jerome, legit looked like a person who could be in a rotation. Yeah. Same with Kenrick Williams. There's guys there that they were getting a lot out of. And if they let Shea play all the games and actually try to win, I definitely think they win 25-ish games. And if you're tanking, 25 wins is probably still in the bottom 4 or 5.
Right. We could have the situation last year.
Same as last year where they
have, say they have 21 games and they have maybe 2 weeks left, and all of a sudden they just lose all of them. And that's bad. The one note I have here about is they picked in the lottery, and the guy isn't a great scorer or a great defender. That's not good for rookies. That usually means there's going to be pretty, little to no impact on his first year. I'm not saying Josh Giddey's not going to be any good. I think he has definitely the skill. I think his passing ability is very valuable in the NBA if he can keep up speed-wise. But if you can't score and you can't defend, it's really hard to impact the game as a rookie, especially if you're going to get blown by on defense. So maybe he'll be playing a lot. Maybe he won't be. I don't know. There is a lot of questions, but I struggled to find a third team for my locks, and this was the best one based on the number.
Yeah, yep. I don't hate it at all.
Well, let's going to move on a little bit to the Magic, another prolific team in the NBA with the Orlando Magic. Fifth overall pick.
Fifth.
Fifth overall pick was Suggs. They went 21-51 last year. They were 14th in the East, 29th in offensive efficiency, so right at the end, and 25th in defense, which is almost there at the end also. They added Suggs. They got Isaac back from his injury, which will really, really help because he's really, really good defensively. Franz Wagner is another draft pick of theirs who should kind of help night to night just based on having a consistent body and a good basketball mind on their roster. I think that'll help. I'm not sure how his offensive impact will be actually scoring the ball, but he'll be there. Robin Lopez, they lost, Gordon for the whole year because he went to the Nuggets last year. James Ennis, Vucevic, who went to the Bulls. Those are all kind of guys what happened in the middle of their season. I have the Magic going under, which is a 23.5 number. These numbers are very, very similar to the last team in the Thunder, 22 and 23.
Yep.
We can get a low as a 21 if you'd like the over. I'm not really sure anybody would like the over with this roster, but maybe. I have no bet written down for this team. I have no idea what to expect. I think Suggs helps, and I think Isaac is good, but the roster overall is really, really bad. One note here is that they're going to rely a lot on Terrence Ross to score the ball. That's not good for your team. They have Mo Bamba playing backup center to Carter Jr. from the Bulls, who has yet to prove himself at all. There's just a lot of questions here. Fultz, what is he going to do? Suggs, can he impact as a rookie? Isaac is good, yes, but how is he going to return from his injury? I don't see an over situation at all here.
No, there's no way you can bet the over. This was my other. This is not one of my locks, but it was really close to being. That number is really low, but man, that roster is bad. They struggled to score when they had Vucevic, Gordon, and Fournier, and now they don't have any of them. And they've replaced them with rookies essentially, and but Wendell Carter. Fultz has coming off an ACL. I don't know if he's gonna be ready for the start of the year, but maybe he will be. Isaac is coming off an ACL, and he also has this COVID thing where he's not getting the vaccine, so he's not gonna be able to play every game. He's basically said like, "I'm not getting it." So that's the thing for them. Their team sucks.
Yeah,
simple as that. They have guys that I kind of like. Like I like Jalen Suggs. He was one of my favorite guys in the draft, but I'm not sure he's ready to like carry an offense.
Right.
He's a one and done guy. He's 20 years old. I like Jonathan Isaac, but Jonathan Isaac's not like carrying an offense either. And then their bench is not very good. Gary Harris has just gone violently downhill. Terrence Ross is a bench player. They're going to Chuma Okeke, like he has shown flashes, but he's not a rotation player on a good team. And Wendell Carter's going to get hurt 20 games in. That's what he does. And then then it's like Mo Bamba or Robin Lopez. What are you going to do? Like that team's bad. They have no way to score. They have a new coach, Jamal Mosley. I think he was the Mavericks guy. They don't have an incentive to win either, really. I mean, if they start sucking, they have their own pick. They needed to get it as high as possible. This draft is going to be pretty good, I think. They're one of those teams that they might, if you take the under, they might like scare you for like till the All-Star break, where it's like, oh, they've got like, 14 wins to the All-Star break. They only need 8 wins to go over, and they just don't win any more games because they have no incentive to win, and their team is so bad.
Well, they're going to have a month where they just lose every game. That's what happens with these teams. Cole Anthony is another guy. He's in that rely on scoring mode for them.
RJ Hampton.
Right. It's going to be tough. I really don't see it at all. I actually like Fultz as a player. I think that he'll eventually kind of find a role on a team.
Yeah.
someday for himself. I actually feel really bad for him, just what all happened, because I think he's super talented. But it doesn't help when he has such a big load offensively. It's like, I mean, come on, like you're gonna combat his problems with, hey, here's the ball and go score a bunch of points. Like, that's not how this works. So I really don't see any situation where you lose this bet outside of the fact that maybe they just luck into some wins at the end of the year. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be offset by the fact that they're going to try to lose those games.
Right.
Yeah, so the next team is the Philadelphia 76ers, and this was another one that it was on my list of considerations, but there are just way too many question marks.
Talk about question marks here. Holy crap.
49-23 last year. They were first in the East. They lost to the Hawks in round 2 when Ben Simmons basically had like a mental collapse on offense, and Embiid just couldn't carry him. 12th in offense, second in defense. They're one of the best defensive teams. Embiid and Simmons are both awesome defensively. Doc's a pretty good coach. He's not the best coach, but he's a good coach. He got a nice, baseline with him. They bring in Andre Drummond, which is weird. Dynamic. He's going to give you what Dwight gave you last year, that they lost Dwight. Embiid, maybe he's on like a mission to avenge his second place MVP finish and try to win, but
Drummond joined this team for one reason. That's to not have to guard Joel Embiid in game.
Because he was tired of getting absolutely demolished by Joel
He got
Embiid.
Murdered every time he guarded him.
Yeah.
That's the sole reason why he joined this roster.
Ultimately, the biggest question is the Simmons. Like, Simmons isn't playing. I think he just lost out however many $1 million for missing a game the other night. And every practice he misses. I listened to the Lowe podcast that Zach Lowe did. It's like $50,000 every practice, and however many million once he starts missing real games. He seems pretty hell-bent on not playing. And me and you have talked about this. The trade options out there are not great. There's been tons of podcasts done. You and I have talked, like, there's just not a lot of good options. And I don't think Morey's going to trade him for 50 cents on the dollar. I think he'd rather just sit and wait and hope somebody else becomes available that maybe makes a little bit more sense. And if they're just playing without Simmons and without any, replacement for him via a trade, like, that team's just not near as good.
Yeah, the only thing that we have to worry about if you bet the under here is that the unexpected piece comes available with guys asking out. Which happens. Like, it's very unpredictable.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really hard to tell who it's going to be, but it just undeniably happens all the time. I don't even know how I would. I mean, what if Donovan Mitchell says, I'm not playing for the Jazz anymore, right? Like, something crazy like that. Like, this team could get amazing really quick. That has such a very, very small chance at happening, but that's just kind of an example that I give. Dame is obviously the guy they throw around a lot, but I don't really see that happening. Daryl Morey would love to have Dame on his team, but for them to take back Ben Simmons like that, I don't really understand how that helps them in the future or right now. The crazy part is that when you look at their starting five, it's actually pretty good. Like, it's
good. If Simmons is there, it's good.
Right. It's kind of like, dang, why don't you just like kind of buy in? Like, this team.
And they were one of the best units. Like, if that 5-man unit was awesome last year.
Yeah. And I like Doc in his second year. I really like that. He's a proven good coach. Embiid could have an MVP season. I think he's gonna come up on our show and our prop show next week. He eventually is going to have an MVP season. I believe that it's going to have to come soon because he's going to have to be in shape to do it. I don't know. The question marks are crazy. I just have no answers as far as what that'll be. I'm going to go under. I think you are the same as me on the under there.
Yeah, it's 50 to 51.5. I just lean under because if the Simmons thing drags out where they just don't have anybody, they don't have Simmons or a person to trade for like 30 or 40 games, that's a lot of pressure on, if Embiid goes down, and he goes down once a year or at least for a few weeks, and that's going to be really tough for them to win games.
Yeah, and if you bet this under, you're going to hope, especially in the beginning of the year, that they start off pretty bad. Like the turmoil really hurts them. Embiid gets pissed off because he has all this stuff on the outside of his own teammates that's happening. They lose a bunch of games. It turns into a big deal. All of a sudden, you look at the roster, even if they do trade him, and it's like, hey, you have so much to ground to make up that one injury just breaks your bet or breaks your roster. So, I like the under here. you and I are not insiders for the 76ers, management, so we can't give answers there.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to watch. Hopefully the unexpected happens because I like, when stuff like that happens. But I expect a big season out of Embiid, and that still means they can go under even if he does that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you just can't bet. Because if they trade Simmons for something half decent, that makes, even if it's not as good a player as Simmons, but It makes sense for their team, like that team's really good. Like I saw something, Zach Losepot, they talked about Indiana. If they got Brogdon, like Brogdon makes a shitload of sense for that team and makes them like good. Like he's not as good as Simmons, but like he makes more sense than Simmons, I think, for their team. He keeps their defense really good. He gives them somebody on offense to just handle the ball and do stuff. Somebody like that is exactly who they need. And if you take the under and then they do that 2 weeks in, and it's like, well, that team's really good. They almost won 50 games in a 72-game season last year. It's just a stay away from me, but I would lean under because this Simmons drama seems like it's going to drag on.
Yeah, I said under on the Pacers also, and you said over. So I hope that happens because that would help my Pacers bet. Let's move on to the next team, a team with a little bit less questions, the Phoenix Suns. Unbelievable season last year. Monty had an amazing season. Chris Paul coming in and really, really affecting the way they play and the way they carry themselves as a team. Devin Booker kind of grew up a little bit with taking a little bit leadership off of his shoulders and kind of giving that role to Chris Paul as kind of a veteran guy who can control the team. 51-21 last year. 51 games for the Suns is crazy, especially with the seasons they've had in the last 5 years. Second in the West, they lost to the Bucks in the finals. They were fourth in offensive efficiency, ninth in defensive efficiency. Being in the top 10 in both is really, really good. That's a sign of good coaching and a sign of guys buying into the team as a whole. They added Landry Shamet, Hutchison, Alfred Payton, nothing crazy. Got rid of Torrey Craig, same thing. Javon Carter, nothing crazy. Really big season last year. How are they going to follow that up? That's kind of the question, of the night for them. Can Booker make a jump? Can Bridges make a jump? Can Cam Johnson make a jump? Right? They have these guys who are going to have opportunities. It's just a matter of do they have, the potential to do that. Their roster is really, really good, especially if Ayton gets better. Ayton could really, really send them on kind of that uphill climb as he gets better because Booker's definitely going to keep getting. I mean, he can score like a maniac. Chris Paul he hasn't gotten worse yet. We had a couple bad seasons, but I think that was based on situation more so than his talent.
Yeah.
Crowder is a really good piece for them. He helps night to night, especially with toughness and just being a team that's going to win. Top 5 players in games played last season for them. Bridges, CP3, Ayton, Booker, Crowder. That's like their starting 5 right there.
All back.
Right. It shows them all. They're all coming back. They played a shit ton of games together last year, the same exact units. That is a huge thing in the NBA for if you can get up in there closer to 60 wins or even the mid 50s. They can't get much better than that. The team has a really good roster fit as far as like guys like CP3 and all the way back down to Ayton. I really like this team. We won money on them betting that they would make the playoffs. They were like, we got like a crazy number for them to make the playoffs.
We got like plus money for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and they finished second. So that really helped. Both you and I have locked this bet at the over 50.5. There's 2 books out there that we have right here, which with are 50.5, even 51.5. I would go over the 51.5 also if that's the only number that you can get. What do you think for this team? Because I think we both are locking it.
This was one of them that I necessarily wasn't like super locked in at first, and then I started digging into them a little bit more, and I'm just like, this is a for sure over. And they just have like they know what they are. CP3 is like, yeah, they had a good season, but like I don't have any question about them backing up the good season with another. CP3's been doing that for 15 years. They have tons and tons of talent. This team has as much talent as any team in the West. They don't maybe have like the super top end like LeBron level talent, but Booker, CP3, Ayton, Bridges, Johnson, they're loaded. They have 8 guys who are like really, really above average NBA players, and they have enough depth. Like I don't think Chandler Hutchison is good, but Chandler Hutchison is tall and can kind of shoot. And if you put him on the court with CP3, if Bridges or Johnson go down, like he's probably going to hold his own. Same with like maybe Jalen Smith is playable.
Shamet too. Shamet can make some shots.
Is certainly like Shaman's like disappointed some people, but like he's good player. Particularly, you put him on the court with other really good players. He's pretty good. They got campaign back. They brought Alfred Payton in, who's like at least playable. Like if something happens to CP3, they just have a lot of they can answer all the questions. Whatever questions come up,
Yeah.
they can answer all of them. They know what they are. They won a shitload of games last year, and I have a bet here that I think is decent value. They are plus 330 to be the number 1 seed. They have the least amount of question marks, in my opinion, of teams in the West. The Lakers have serious health concerns with Davis and LeBron and a whole new roster, like 10 new guys on that team. The Jazz have like demons from the playoff collapses that they've had over the last couple of years. The Suns just have a super good team, top to bottom. They know what they're going to do. They're going to win like 55 games because they just have plenty of talent, good coaching, stability with CP3. I think there's a chance that like they could just kind of like limp into the number 1 seed because other teams just have too many issues.
Yeah, that was one of my final notes for this team was that the West is still kind of open. We have so many questions on these top end teams.
No Murray, no Leonard, a Dallas team that's like completely relying on Luka, a Warriors team with tons of injuries. Like,
I think Booker is looking at Chris Paul right now and saying, "Hey, like this run is not over. That was not a fluke. Look at the teams.
We can go back to the finals."
Right, like the league has not really, or the conference has not really changed at all.
No, like if anything, they've gotten like kind of worse. Or they're the same as what they were in the playoffs with all these injuries, other than maybe the Lakers if they can keep both of their guys healthy.
Right, which is the same. It was the same thing as last year. So it's not like you got like this new super team added, right? It's not like LeBron joined the thing is the exact same thing. I expect them to have the same fire as last year. I expect that confidence to kind of roll over into them being like, hey, we see ourselves as a top tier team. We don't see ourselves as the young guys coming up. We see ourselves as the top, and you guys are fighting to be better than us. I really, really like this bet. And the other team that I think is going to contend with them at the top, like you said, is the team that we have towards the bottom. And I'll be interested to see your thoughts on them.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's Lakers, Suns, Jazz are pretty clearly the best regular season teams. Like, I have the least amount of questions about the Suns and the Jazz regular season wise, just because Suns did it last year and they brought the same team back. The Jazz have the same team. Like, we kind of know what we're getting. They both have awesome coaches. The Suns just have like the least amount of question marks to me of maybe like any team besides the Bucks. Like they have the exact same team and they have like Chris Paul just like gets the job done and he's not going to let anybody slack off. And they have young guys who are hungry, looking for big contracts. Johnson's coming up in a couple of years. Bridges is on, I think, due for an extension. This team is really good, and they have every motivation to win, to be first in the West.
Yeah, Jalen Smith's going to play in the regular season too. I'm not sure he'll play much in the playoffs.
Maybe he gives them a little something that they didn't have last year. He is a talented player. I mean, that Halliburton pass up is probably going to haunt him to some degree. People are always going to give him crap for that, but he's not a bad player. I think he will eventually contribute.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's a question, just more of a concern is that the Ayton contract stuff really becomes an issue. It doesn't really seem like it will be. I mean, they're going to pay him. He can't turn it down. He can't turn down $1 million, but I mean, you never know. I guess something could happen where he starts to something weird happens within the roster, but I doubt it. I mean, he'll end up signing. So I like it. And let's go on to the next team with the Blazers.
Yeah, the Blazers are an enigma to me. They've been up and down. They kind of somewhat the same team, but win of varying amounts of games every year. And they always end up sixth in the West. They were sixth last year. They lost 4-2 to the Nuggets in round one with no Jamal Murray. They have legitimate questions as to what the Dame CJ future looks like. They've run this back a lot of times at this point. And they made one conference finals in a year where everybody was injured and then they got waxed by the Warriors. Everybody got waxed by the Warriors, I should say, but still this team's it's not a finals team. They got Norman Powell for a full year. They traded for Larry Nance. Covington was pretty good for them. Nurkic had a nice bounce back year after breaking his ankle the year before. I just don't see how they have their ceiling has not changed to me. They are the same team that they have been forever. Dame is amazing. He carries you to like minimum 42 wins every year. And their over-under sits 44.5 or 45.5. And that's just, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, you and I are a little bit different on this team also. This is a lean for me. This is not a lock, but this is a lean. I'm going to bet this over. Top 3 in games played on this roster last season: Cantor, Covington, and Carmelo. The top 3 players that played the most games on the roster.
Yeah, CJ missed a decent amount of time, and Dame missed quite a bit.
Yeah, that ain't good. I expect Dame and CJ to play a lot, specifically because of the new head coach. He's going to want to play those guys. That's what new coaches do. They want to go in there and win. They want to prove themselves. They're going to play guys if they have the chance to. Yes, obviously they can sit, or injuries happen out of their control. But with Chauncey in there, he's going to want to have these guys playing every single night as much as he can. Powell played 27 games for this roster last year. He's honestly could be like their 3rd best player on multiple nights. Yeah, which isn't good, but still. Nurkic played 37 games for this team last year.
Yeah.
If he has a good year, that will significantly help their team with the defense that he can bring, and just a little bit more stability down low. I think that with the new head coach is a really good mix for this roster because they need somebody to kind of come in and give them the fire to do it. The problem is that they've already kind of done this. Like this is now just becoming like it's just the same story over and over again.
Yeah.
I'm worried that something bad happens to the roster, or just bad happens in general with the 2 stars on the team. But it just seems like Dame is loyal. It seems like CJ wants to play there with Dame. I think if health is on their side, that this over is going to hit over 44.5.
Yeah, I just don't know. I'm looking at their records the last few years. 42 wins, 35 wins, 53 wins, 49, 41, 44. Like they do this like ebb and flow deal. And like Dame is so good, but like he's dealt with injuries the last couple of years. McCollum gets hurt every year. It seems like Nurkic has been hurt a lot. And I don't think Chauncey Billups is an upgrade. Terry Stotts is a pretty good coach. He's had a crap defensive team that's like been able to manage inside the top 20 up until last year. They were 29th last year. That's terrible. But he's like figured out ways to like make this team pretty good every year. And I don't know that Billups is necessarily an upgrade in year 1. There was a lot of questions about whether or not Dame wanted Chauncey Billups to be their new head coach. And I think that if they don't get off to like an awesome start, there's a trade. Like I think CJ gets traded. And maybe Dame is actually fed up and maybe he wants to trade. I am leaning under. This is not a team that I want to bet. I don't have a good feel with the Blazers, but I would lean under.
Yeah, the questions are big. I think, a majority of the time, if you simulate this team, they'll stay together and they'll play. I definitely understand that that the bad could happen, but I think the Nurkic Powell combo isn't that bad if they actually are healthy. The one thing I worry about is CJ, right? Like he's the really big. I mean, if he's out for a lot of time, then they're going to lose a lot of games. That's the one problem.
Yeah.
They lost. I don't really care about the loss of Carmelo. That really doesn't do anything for me. But we'll see. This is a lean. This is not a lock. This is just a lean for me. I think just the overall sample of game sizes with these guys will help their team. And the number 44. That's not a ton. That is a little bit, but hopefully you'll hit one of those spikes like you talked about, and we'll hit that over. The next team that we have is another really, really bad team, and that's the Sacramento Kings. Although their numbers is considerably higher than the bad teams we talked about at the beginning, and they're about 10 games higher at a 34, 35, even a 36 number out there on one of the books. I'm going under on the 36.5 for the Sacramento Kings. Yeah. They won 31 games last year, 31-41. They were 12th in the West. They got the 9th overall pick, and that was Mitchell from Baylor, the little kind of bulldog point guard, defensive guy. They were 30th in defensive efficiency last year.
They were on pace to be the worst defense of all time by, like, a lot. I don't know if they ended up being the worst, but they were, like through, like, 50 games, they were the worst defensive team ever.
That being said, they were 10th on offense. They actually weren't that bad. Fox is lightning fast, so that kind of helps. The defense is so bad, but this is what I have here. This is actually kind of funny. Is that they helped their defense by adding a rookie. That is not going to help. I understand that he can play defense.
That never helps.
Rookies don't like help those problems. I get that it could help long term, but this roster stinks. I think there could be some trading involved with this roster, especially with a guy like Buddy Hield, even Barnes, or even Bagley. If he could be a guy who just doesn't want to play there anymore, based on, or they might not 100%. Even want him if something bad happens. Added Tristan Thompson, got rid of DeLon Wright and Hassan Whiteside, which should be a pro. That should be in the pro section of this team. Halliburton is kind of the bright side for them, right? Like he could kind of take over as the main ball handler on the team. That would probably really help and kind of give themselves a little bit more consistency as far as like how they play as an identity on offense and defense. What do you think about the Kings?
They are a lock for me on the under. I just think that they're one of those teams that like they're just dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Like there's just not a lot of things that are coherent and they just go out and win games. I like the fact that they were 10th in offense last year. Obviously, that's a good sign, particularly with how good Halliburton looked. But to me, this is a team that even if they don't trade people, this is still not a 38. They're not threatening 500 with this team.
No.
They're the same defensively. But they're still horrific. Tristan Thompson and Davion Mitchell are not helping their defense. They maybe are 28th in defense this year. And I think, to me, this is like the sleeper Simmons destination. I still think a Fox for Simmons deal they would consider. And I think that makes them – I don't think that helps them win any more games. Like it's going to help their defense a lot, makes their offense worse, in my opinion. I like Halliburton. I think he's a guy that if you can pair him with shooters and other high IQ guys, makes a lot of sense. But he's still in his second year. 10th in offense seems like that might have been an overachievement. I don't know how they got 10th in offense. If they fall back any in offense and the defense is still terrible, like that's a 30-win team.
I think I'm definitely betting this with you. I think this team could flirt with the upper 20s if bad things happen.
If Fox gets hurt, like
right.
They are screwed.
Yeah, I don't really see it. Holmes as a starting center. I mean, come on, like you ain't winning.
He's been better, but he gets hurt all the time too.
Right. There's just not much going on here. I like Halliburton. I just don't think that he's like a guy who's going to turn your team around as a one guy. He's more of like that. He's almost like a super, super good glue guy, right? Like he like kind of fits. He can fit multiple holes on. He can do a lot of jobs, but he's really, really talented in those things.
He's like him and Dragic are not like a similar player, but I think he can be like a similar skill level where it's like borderline all-star in his good years, but he's not like if he's one of your best two players, right. Not positive that's a championship team.
Yeah, you
overqualified like third player.
If you bet the over, you have to make a case for how that's going to win. And there's like there's not really any cases for that to win besides a lot of like weird things to come together. For
Luke Walton is still coaching this team, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so. He's been horrible. Yeah. Fox would have to be like so he would have to have obviously his best year of his career for them to be good. Maybe they get like a trade and somehow get somebody better back. I don't really know how it happened, but I doubt it.
I feel like Barnes is a trade candidate. Bagley's a trade candidate.
Yeah.
Fox, Hield was in trade rumors all summer with the Lakers. Like,
I think this is a team we could be
potentially say let's go the other way.
Right.
Let's go the other way. Let's get something for Hield. Let's get something for Barnes. And let's just go the other direction. Certainly, that's why I'm going. That's why they're a lock under for me. Is because to me their likelihood of going under is way like their chance of variance in the bad direction is way higher.
They only won 31 games last year, and they missed out on all the top tier players in the draft. Like they didn't even get one of the big guys. So it's like, what are you doing? What is your plan here? I get.
And they didn't sign anybody who helps them.
Right. So I don't see it. We'll see if they trade anybody, but I mean, in the history, their trades have been horrific. So what makes me think that's going to change now?
Yeah.
Not much at all. If Ben Simmons goes there, what even said that he's going to play? Who knows if Ben Simmons will even play for the Kings if he gets traded there?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen. Way too many things. You cannot convince me the team's going to go over. Let's move on to the Spurs. Another, just a handful of teams tonight that aren't going to win very many games.
No, this has been a pretty bad set of teams.
Yeah.
And this is my lock of the night. It pains me to say it because they've been like so good, and it's like makes no sense to like have them be a lock under. But this team sucks. Like no DeRozan. They had Aldridge for part of the year last year. No Rudy Gay. No Patty Mills. That's like arguably their 4 of their 5 best players from last year. And they went 33 and 39. And their over under sits between 28.5 and 30.5. I'm going to go under on the 30.5. Obviously, this team is not good. Who is their best 2 players?
Murray and White.
Derek White is terrible.
Okay,
he's not a rotation player on a good team.
Murray and Keldon.
And they're like figuring it out. Like they're type of players who need to be on a team with other good players so they can like grow into roles. Their team is bad. They don't have a top.
He was okay he had a pretty good.
Go look at his stats last year. He was terrible. He had 1 good playoff game, and everybody's been blowing him for the whole time since then. He made the freaking FIBA team.
Yeah,
and was FIBA team. Freaking an anchor for that team. Holy crap, he sucked for them. That team sucked. He sucked. He is the most overrated player the Spurs have ever had because he had 1 awesome playoff game against the Nuggets.
He only averaged 3.5 assists last year. That's not very good.
DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker, Thad Young, Pirtle, like Josh Primo. Like this team is so bad.
And Primo's going to probably play in the G League. We saw that this week. Is that Primo's going to play in the G League? You've seen that. I just don't.
Their best player would not be the 3rd best player on like 80% of teams.
Yeah.
And 30 wins is a lot for a team that has 0 all-star candidates. We just talked about the Kings. De'Aaron Fox would be the best player on this team by a mile. And Halliburton, I would rather have Halliburton than any of these guys, if I'm being honest. So I don't even know how they sniff 30 wins, and they have no reason to win games. They should go the other way, get a better draft pick than picking 11th or wherever they picked the last couple of years with Devin Vassell and Josh Primo. They need to pick 4th or 3rd.
Yeah, DeMar averaged 20 points a game, and there wasn't anybody else even close to him. Which shows,
I don't know how they're going to average like 90 points a game. I don't know how they score.
And he led the team in assists. DeMar DeRozan led the team in assists last year. He's not on the team anymore, and that's already a bad sign right there that he led the team in assists. The defense actually, I think, should be better with Keldon, and maybe if Vassell plays a little more. But they have absolutely no scoring, like you said. They're going to have so many low-scoring nights where they just get blown out by some of these high-powered teams. I don't see it. I'm going to go under with you. Also, I'll probably lean and bet this with you just based on how bad the roster is. We know how good Pop is. We get it. But he's kind of shown he's kind of shown the last few years, like if he doesn't have the talent, like you can be as good as coach as you want. It's still hard to win in the NBA. This team just really doesn't have it. Maybe they get Ben Simmons, right? We've been kind of saying that about a lot of teams. Like, who knows what's going to happen? That's just a question everywhere. There's just not really much. Maybe Lonnie is better. I don't really know. Maybe Lonnie kind of puts up 17 to 18 points a game. I don't know if he can do that or not. McDermott is not a terrible piece, but he's not a terrible piece if your other players are good. It's not if McDermott is one of your good players. So I don't see it. I don't have an argument. This is very kind of similar to the Kings as far as like you can't convince me they're going to go over. So why would I not go under? I don't have much of information to tell you otherwise than that.
Patty Mills played 68 games for them last year and averaged 11 points a game. DeMar DeRozan played 61 of the 72 games and averaged 21.6 and 7 assists. Like, I just don't know what does their offense look like? It's just a bunch of guys jacking up shots. Like, Lonnie Walker's probably going to get to shoot way more than necessary.
Yeah.
Keldon Johnson is a really nice player. I like him, but he's not a guy that you can give the ball to score. He's a complimentary scorer. Now, he's a nice player. DeJounte, 31.7% from three last year. It's been bad every year. Rudy Gay averaged 12 points a game for them in 63 games. Like, I don't see it. I honestly think that they know that this team is not good. And if they get off to a bad start, they need to go the other direction.
Yeah, they actually have White and Murray, I think, are kind of decent in pick and rolls, but they don't have a pick and roll player. Like, it's not like, hey, they can like rely on this to score points. They don't really have anything. There's a lot of guys who kind of play one-on-one on this team.
Their bench is so bad also.
The bench is horrific.
You're talking Trey Jones, Lonnie Walker, Luka Samanic, and some guy named Eubanks.
Is that what's his name? The big dude? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and Vassell looked all right. I mean, but he's a second-year rookie who's not a guy you can throw the ball to score. It's like,
right.
If DeJounte Murray scores, like, he might score 20 points a game this year, and this team is still horrific.
Right. Yeah.
So this is my favorite bet of the night for sure. Under.
All right, that's perfect. I'm going to bet it with you, so that's an easy pick there. Let's move on to the Toronto Raptors, a team that's going to be back actually in their city, right? They're going to be out of Florida and back into Toronto, which is nice. Their number is 37 and 35 and 36, so you can go as low as 35, high as 37. I have the under here. You and I look like we're a little bit different here. I have the under 37.5. The Raptors won 27 games, 27 and 45 last year, fourth overall pick, and they picked Scotty Barnes. They got Precious Achiuwa in the Lowry trade, and they got Dragic also, who will help, but not really. He's not a regular season player. He hasn't been for years. I watched like hundreds of Goran Dragic games. I know that to be true. He does not play in the regular season. He does play well, but he doesn't play very much. Their starting five is going to pretty much be Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., who actually is pretty good. I wish he was back on the Blazers because I wanted to. I think that would help my over bet there. OG Siakam and Birch. Siakam didn't really get better last year. That was kind of a weird thing. He shot under 30 from three, so I think that's very, very concerning if that's a guy who you're going to rely on to score a lot. Gary Trent Jr. will definitely help them. I don't see Dragic playing much in the regular season. Like I said, I think he's going to be a guy that they're going to rely on towards the end of the year if they can get into the playoffs or maybe in that play-in type game, and hopefully they'll maybe compete for that. Barnes is not much of a scorer. I'm not really sure. He's kind of that another kind of glue guy-esque, plays defense, plays hard, moves the ball, gets scrap points. I'm not really sure how he helps a lot offensively in his first year as a rookie. Maybe just by playing hard, that'll help. Too many things need to be good for this team to be good, but they do have a really good coach. He's proven that. They've overachieved in years that they shouldn't have. The Lowry question is what I'm interested to hear from you is what do you think they'll do to replace that Lowry production?
So I just looked. Lowry played only 46 games last year, and some of those games, quite frankly, I don't really think he was trying too hard.
Right.
They lost a lot of games last year. I'm not like super confident in this over. I do think I would lean that way only because VanVleet gives a shit every night. Same with OG, same with Siakam. They have a really good coach. Dragic, I think, will help. Like, he gives you 75% of what Lowry gives you on a nightly basis. Like, he just does. I mean, his stats would show that. Now, how many games is he going to play is the big question mark with Dragic. How soon does he break his foot? But OG only played 45 games last year. If he can play a few more games. And they're going to try to win, I think. Like, this is a team that has pride. They're going to want to win games. I don't know that Barnes really helps you win a lot of games as a rookie. He's not the type of guy, but, he plays really hard. They were still 12th in defense last year. And I think they could be maybe even a smidge better.
If OG plays a lot of games. Defense, right? Their thing is going to be, we're going to stop you.
We're going to play really hard, and we're going to stop you.
Siakam is athletic and long. Barnes
averaged 27 and 5 last year. That's still pretty good.
Yeah. OG is athletic and long and big. Same
and
thing.
He has some growth potential.
Right. His offense is, he's kind of like
comes and goes.
A little robot-y, right? He's not very fluid, but that's okay. Gary Trent can play defense. Barnes supposedly is going to be able to play good defense. Their
He's
defense
big
is,
enough.
yeah, it's going to be their thing, definitely. Like that's going to come out. They're going to kind of hang their hat on. It's just going to be a matter of trying to find out how they can score consistently. They have guys who can score, certainly. Siakam can play well. Van Fleet had humongous games in the last couple of years. He scored like a lot. But the problem is how are you going to do it night to night, especially in the conference that's gotten a little better in the last year. So
definitely,
I like this under. The thing with this was I think this is a really good number. I think this is a really, really good number for this team.
It is a sharp number.
Yeah. So I don't know if I would necessarily, push anybody to bet it, but if I am going to bet it, I'm not really sure. I haven't really decided on that yet. I need to probably, kind of close my eyes and think about it, but I would lean under.
Yeah, I'm going to do the opposite. I just think that Nurse will find a way to get this offense to be like league average. They were 16th last year. I think they can be 18th this year. And if they're like 9th in defense, which I think they can be, this team should be really good on defense. And they should be really focused on being good on defense.
Yeah.
I like that they're back in their home stadium in front of fans, potentially. And their bench is not great by any means, but like if Dragic is healthy, he's good. If Precious is healthy with a new coach and a bit more opportunity, he should give you something. And I do think Barnes is going to be playable. He's going to be a guy that you can definitely play. I'm going to take Nick Nurse in the infrastructure, Fred VanVleet, those guys. I just think over, 35 and a half, they can win 30. They can go 36 and 46.
Yeah. Messiah is good too. It's
yeah.
You don't
if they're going to try to win too, he could maybe make a play for a center who is better than what they have now.
Right. Yeah. They can add a piece, at any time. And you think, oh man, like, that guy's not a big name, but all of a sudden he really helps them win. Right. Like that's kind of what they do. So you can never discount those types of moves. Maybe, us being on the other side should push us away from this bet, or we root to the 36 number and we try to win both of them, which would be crazy. Let's move on. This is a lock for me. I have the Utah Jazz over 51.5. The number gets as high as 53.5. So if you want to go under, I would take the 53. I'm over 51.5. The Jazz had an amazing regular season last year. They won 52 games. They were first in the West. They lost in the second round to the Clippers after blowing a 2-0 lead.
Terrible.
Which was just god-awful. They were third.
They lost Game 6 at home with no Kawhi.
Yeah, that's a tough look. That's really bad. Third in offense, third in defense. So they clearly were, they had, everything running on all cylinders in the regular season. Their roster is awesome. Like when you look at the pieces on paper, like they have
1 through 9 is
good.
Good.
They have really, really good fit pieces, and they have like really good players for like their top half. Like it's hard to find 8 or 9 good players on an NBA team. They have it, so that's a really good thing. They added Hassan Whiteside, which I would say is a con, not a pro. They added Rudy Gay. I kind of wanted to talk about this with you, the Rudy Gay thing, because I think this is really going to help them. I think this gives them a lot more options that they're going to have, especially with the Rudy Gay or with the Rudy Gobert questions, is that I think Rudy Gay can kind of play into these like weird lineup situations for them. Mitchell should be awesome. He should be looking for an all-NBA type season. He's kind of hitting that stride right now, if that's kind of the career that he, is going to make for himself. Rudy Gay played 63 games last year and shot 38 from 3. I think that really helps this team, especially because 100%. They have other guys on there. Joe Ingles is another guy like that. Shoots high from 3, plays defense, moves the ball. This roster is awesome. I think the over is a pretty safe pick. I worry that Clarkson kind of had a little bit of a fluky year last year. I'm not sure he's going to be as good as he was, but that's fine because I think Mitchell should, continue to get better, which will be great. They have a really good coach. I'm not worried about the playoff stuff. We'll worry about that after we cash our bet. I'm more worried about them winning a lot of games. And night to night, when they put this roster on the court, they're going to have a really good chance to win every single night.
Yep. I'm not a lock, but I do definitely lean over. I think this team is I said this earlier, one of the safer regular season teams. They have an awesome coach. I love Quinn Snyder. They were third in both offense and defense last year. They have identity. They have an anchor in Gobert who seems to play a lot of games. Conley is kind of like a bonus if they get 60 games out of him. Like that's
right.
Really good. They lost Derek Favors, but I think Rudy Gay is going to be a better version of what they were getting from Favors. They got killed in the playoffs when teams went small and kind of stretched them out. They didn't really have a lot of answers for that. I think Rudy Gay will help with that. I'm not saying Gay's like the answer to that question, but he's somebody you can throw out there and guard the Morris or like that. That was their issue. Is Gobert didn't have anywhere to go, and they just could attack. I think Gay helps them with that. They got Eric Pascal. He's not awesome, but George Niang played decent amount for this team. He's as good as George Niang. I think he has the potential to be at least. He's an interesting guy, and they have a really, really good coach. They just do. He's one of the best regular season coaches, period. He gets a lot out of this team. He's good offensively and defensively, and this team is just deep. Jared Butler was their first-round pick. I actually think he will help them. He was one of those guys coming in the draft that he doesn't maybe have the upside, and he had that heart scare, but he plays good defense. He's fast. He's smart. He's experienced. If he could play some backup point guard for them, I would not be shocked if he was playable. This team is just good. Just good.
Yeah, and I love a roster that's full of high IQ players. And
this is like a better version of the Grizzlies for me. I was saying that I loved the Grizzlies because they just played a ton of above average guys. This is like the supercharged Grizzlies.
Yeah, I mean they proved it last year. The question is if I don't. The only concern I have is something weird happens with the pieces inside. Like all of a sudden they think, well, this ain't gonna work. I don't think that'll happen. I think the Dwayne Wade addition as a part owner, right, is a big reason. There was a big reason for that. It wasn't just because they wanted his money. Yeah. The guys have enough money, so they're fine. Yeah. I think it was more of a let's keep Mitchell happy. Let's keep Mitchell on the pace of I'm going to be a Utah Jazz for multiple years. I think that he should hopefully take a step. They should have that confidence. This is a pretty similar conversation that we're having now compared to what we had with the Phoenix Suns. They have a lot of good pieces. They have a lot of guys who play multiple games per season, which is great. I think this is a pretty safe pick, and this is going to be my last lock of the NBA over-unders, the Utah Jazz over 51.5.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of question marks. If you look right back here, right there, that is a Donovan Mitchell rookie PSA 9. When he gets second team All NBA, that's going to go on the Bay. Check that out. Yeah. I think that he has the potential for he had a really good season last year, but I think he got shortchanged a little because the rest of their players played so good that it was I don't really know who's to get the credit here, but and he missed some time with an ankle injury. If he doesn't get hurt, he was an All NBA player for sure. He has a little bit left to prove. That's what I like also.
100%.
He's proven a lot, but he hasn't taken the playoff step and I'm an All NBA guy consistently step, and I think that he definitely has the potential to do so.
Yeah, they them performing so bad in the playoffs helped this bet because they should have a little fire in them. They should have a little hey, that wasn't really us. I'm young. I'm the leader of this team. I'm going to step up and kind of take us to the promised land. Yeah. He only needs to win he just needs to get to the Western Conference Finals. He doesn't even need to really get to the finals. So I think they're going to have a big year. You actually were on this bet last year, which is awesome because they blew their over under out of the water.
Catch that early.
Yeah. So that was a really nice bet for us. Let's do the last team, and then after we get on with this team, I want to mention the GM survey and kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so the last team, Washington Wizards, over under 32.5 to 34.5. They were 34 and 38 last year, thanks to a pretty big run down the stretch. I think we had their over under, and it was under. Then all of a sudden they got hot, and we cashed the over. They lost in the playoffs to the Sixers after getting out of the play-in games. Obviously, Russell Westbrook. They lost Robin Lopez. But they added Dinwiddie, Caldwell Pope, Kuzma, Harrell, Kispert. This team
Holiday.
is just Aaron Holiday. This team is just deep in a weird way. They have so many guys that kind of do the same thing, play the same position. I don't really know how they solve that. Kuzma, Denny, Rui, Bertans, Casey, or Kispert are all kind of the same model of a guy to varying
They
degrees.
have
They're
like
all
8
between
role
like
players.
6'5" and
Yeah.
6'9", that need to play on the perimeter. So they have a new coach. Beal is really, really good when he plays.
Do you know Thomas Bryant update?
I don't know when he's going to be back. He tore his ACL last year. He's coming back. Dane Gafford is not somebody that I think is awesome, but he played good for them last year. They got Montrezl Harrell, obviously. He should help just like have somebody who's decent. I'm taking the over.
Back.
What?
It says he could come back at the beginning of the year, but it's still in the question mark. So we probably won't see.
Who is their coach? I can't remember who they hired.
So now I don't know. I'll look it up.
Anyways, I'm going to lean over, and I actually think this might actually end up betting this just because they're one of those teams that they're not going to play bad players.
Unseld. It's Wes Unseld.
Oh yeah. Experienced guy.
Yeah.
Guy he's been around the block a lot. This team, I think, wants to win. The trade they made with Westbrook gave them a bunch of pretty good role players. Like Caldwell Pope obviously isn't great. Kuzma's not great, but they have a ton of guys who can play good basketball. They're not playing Rui has proven to be a good player. I think Denny actually showed some nice stuff last year on a team that was weird with Westbrook and Beal. I think that he's a good player. Now he's coming back from an injury as well. But they have a floor of, competence with 8 or 9 good basketball players.
Yeah.
And Beal's ceiling night to night can carry you offensively. My question for them is defense. Are they good enough defensively to go 500? They don't need to go 500 to win this bet, but can they be in the top 20 in defense? They were 18th last year. Can they maintain that?
Yeah, the pieces are interesting. I'm a big Rui fan. I think he could have a big year for them, especially with Russ out of the picture. He played 65 games, averaged 22 a game last year. That's actually he had a big part in them.
We cashed that bet though, under 26.5.
Oh yeah, we did do that. We cashed both of those. That was really good by us.
Yeah.
But I'm still going over. This is not a lock for me either, but I would lean the over on this just based on the pieces and what you were saying. Dinwiddie's kind of a wild card. I really like Dinwiddie. I wanted him to end up on the Miami Heat somehow, but how he plays in the beginning of the year is kind of up in the air. I don't really know what his situation is going to be like because he kind of plays on shiftiness. He plays on, hitting, using his body because he's a really, really tall point guard who can play at different paces, scores at a high. He has a bunch of different levels of scoring in the paint.
Yeah.
Floaters out of 3. So, he definitely uses his athleticism, in a way to help him, score and stuff. So I don't really know what his thing is, but he is a really, really good player. They just have good pieces, like you said. I'm really sure what to expect from Denny. I don't know if he'll have much of a role offensively on this team, but he'll definitely get some minutes. Bryant, I think he should be back at the beginning of the year, maybe towards Christmas time, because he tore his ACL last year, I believe. Yes. So
yeah.
I don't mind the team. Aaron Holiday's not bad. I've actually seen him play in person. He's actually a little better than I thought.
Pretty good.
He's pretty short, but he's fast and pretty good.
Holiday boys have proven that they are NBA players.
Right. Yeah. He's decent. Kuzma is kind of what does he look like with a little bit of a bigger role? I also kind of question whether where he sees himself. Does he see himself as the number 2 option to Bradley Beal? That would kind of make me concerned if I was a Wizards.
I'm interested to see who starts. I think Dinwiddie, Beal, Kuzma, that's a for sure starting 3. But then is it Rui and Harrell? Is it Rui and Gafford? Is it Bertans and Harrell? Is it, is KCP starting and Kuzma's at the 4?
Didn't Bertans get $80 million?
Yeah, but I think he came off the bench last year too. So
maybe Rui and Gafford probably. Yeah.
It's a team that is going to take some figuring out. Yeah. I'd be interested to see who's getting minutes night to night. It's just one of those teams that they're not going to play bad players. I mean, if they take some injuries, obviously they will. Every team will if they take some injuries, but their bench is solid. They have one of the better benches if Denny is pretty good, and I think he is.
If the Bradley Beal thing breaks bad, though, this is an automatic loss. That's the problem.
Yes, that's why you cannot. That's why I'm probably not going to bet this.
Yeah, I don't really see it. I feel like if it would have broken bad, it would have already happened, but maybe not.
Same. I think that they're motivated to win. I think they want to see what this new coach can do with a pretty good roster. I mean, it's not a great roster, but if Beal is the dude he thinks he is, he should be able to take this roster to near 500. If he's an All-NBA guy, this roster is good enough to, take this team. Their over-under is sitting like basically the same, is way lower than the Hornets. And he would be, if he's as good as he thinks he is, this team should be as good as the Hornets. They have as many good role players as the Hornets have. Now, Hayward and LaMelo are maybe a bit better, but I think Bradley Beal, he's either getting a little undersold here or, the bookmakers know who Bradley Beal is.
Yeah, I think if Dinwiddie's good, then this is an easy bet.
Yeah.
If you could promise me that he's going to be good, I think this would almost be a lock for me because I think that he's that good and he helps their team. That's really out of respect for Beal because I think Beal is a monster compared to, I think if he was on like the Lakers, people would be out talking to him like he's like Kobe Bryant or something. The problem is we don't know. We don't know what he's going to do. We don't know what Beal's situation is going to be like. We don't know what Wes Unseld Jr. is going to be like as a head coach. They do have the pieces. They do have some guys that will probably end up wasting nights on League Pass, unfortunately. But I would lean over, but this will not be a lock for me. Let's hit on some of this stuff of the GM survey before we end because we can't end on the freaking Washington Wizards. That's just bad.
Right.
I'm going to give you some quick hitter topics, and let's just kind of go through them. Let's just do a couple minutes here. Most likely to break out for the GM survey, Jaren Jackson and Ja were both on the list. So that kind of plays into your Memphis lock. To have two players on the list to break out, that would be unbelievable. So you got other guys like Anthony Edwards, Michael Porter Jr., Garland, Keldon, all guys that we've kind of hit on during the show. What are your thoughts on both of them having a good season, Ja and Jaren Jackson?
That was kind of my I talked about them a lot. Like they have a baseline of good players. They don't play bad players on a nightly basis. They play a lot of guys who try hard. They have a pretty good coach. But like year 3 Ja with a lot of motivation to like, hey, I'm like really good. I'm not just like, hey, I'm good. That was a good pick. Like I'm really good. Jaren Jackson barely played last year. He was a good player his rookie year. And him and Ja make a shitload of sense together.
Yeah, they do.
Like he can pick and pop. He can pick and roll. He can just play off of him and shoot threes and drive, play in the post. Jaren's thing is injury to me. Like if he can stay healthy, he hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. I think Ja is going to have a monster year. I think that he is set up, if he can just make a few more off the dribble threes, he has like a Trae Young type of year in him where he averages like 24 and 10.
Yeah, they have guys who play so hard too. I love that about their team.
And their coach has proven that he's a good coach. He is a good coach.
Most underrated acquisition, Larry Nance Jr., Patty Mills, Dinwiddie, and Lonzo. What would you say out of those four, the most underrated acquisition? Maybe Patty Mills?
I think that, if I'm just looking at this list, I think Kemba Walker is being underrated because he had a bad season. But, like, he is exactly what the Knicks need. Like, their defense was awesome with not that good of defensive players in theory last year.
Right.
And they just couldn't score. If he can give them, like, 80% of what he used to be, that's way better offensively than what they had last year. Like, if their offense can go from, like, 22nd or whatever they were last year to, like, 14th somehow, that team is good. Like, Tibbs, like I talked about, Tibbs gets a lot out of his teams, particularly on defense, that he's kind of, like, been a cast-off, and he's not that far removed from being, like, really good.
Yeah, I think that we can't buy into the preseason, but if the Bulls actually come out as a high-powered offense, Lonzo will be the answer to this question because they have yet to have a real point guard on that team for multiple years.
Definitely.
If they play like they did the other night where they can really, really score, that's all because of how he can control the game. And he's going to be their best defensive player. Right. And they have super athletes, and they have guys who can really, really, really run. So I think that has a chance to win also.
Definitely.
I just question whether some of their, whether their pieces will all come together or not. Most improved teams, all right? That goes right into it. The Bulls, Hornets, Pelicans. What do you think about the Pelicans being a most improved team?
I don't know how did they get better?
I don't know. I'm kind of good. I don't know. I'm thinking about
They
that.
got rid of Lonzo Ball and got Devontae Graham. That's a downgrade. They got Valanciunas is better than Steven Adams, but I don't really know that Valanciunas changes your
Yeah.
outlook in today's NBA. Unless
That's actually,
Zion is going to go from like 27 a game to like 31, and they got a new coach, like that doesn't make. Are they going to be better?
I
Do you think they're going to be better?
no. I think I bet that under, but I think there might be something to Zion like clearly being the best player on the team now. I think that could help them.
Yeah.
I just don't know if Brandon Ingram believes it. He probably doesn't because he was an all-star. But maybe
I think Zion was an all-star last year.
Yeah, that's true. So if something happens where it's like Zion is all of a sudden like a all NBA type guy, right? Maybe, but I don't see it. That roster kind of sinks. But
I do think Bulls will be one of the more improved teams. I mean, they won like 20 some games.
That's just because
they're going to win 40 to 45 games, probably.
Right.
They added a lot of talent. They got Vucevic for a full year. They added DeRozan and Ball and Caruso.
Yeah.
Like if they're not improved, heads are going to roll.
I think if you took the number at the book laid on the team versus their roster their record last year, I think the Bulls would probably be number one.
Yes, I would guess so.
Biggest steal in the draft, Suggs at 5 to the Magic. We both talked about him kind of helping their team with a consistent night-to-night player who can bring the ball up the floor and help their offense. Do you think he's a guy who can impact their team on year one?
No. And I'm like a huge Jalen Suggs guy. I think he's really, really good. He's the type of guy who needs like a big time scorer next to him. Like he's going to be able to score, I think, in the NBA, but he's not like a 25 a game scorer. To me, he's like a Mike Conley, like good on defense, good on offense. You don't have to answer. Like he's going to answer questions for you, run your offense, be a stabilizing type of player, but he has no one else to score on that offense.
Yeah,
like how is he going to? And he's like, it's not like he's a 4-year player. He's a one and done, 20-year-old on a team that has Markelle Fultz and Jonathan Isaac and Chuma Okeke playing real minutes. Like,
yeah,
he went from like it is a steal, in my opinion, that he fell to them because they really, really needed a guy like him, but they don't have the horses for him to make a difference.
Yeah, when you kind of hear about those rookies where it's like, oh, he got drafted into a really good situation. That's not the case. This is like the opposite of that, where it's like he's going to almost have too much of a role. Hopefully it doesn't hurt him in the long run. I doubt it will because he's probably smart enough to know like, hey, just kind of focus on me and do my thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, too much. There's going to be a lot of focus on stopping him if he actually is good. I'd say there's probably a chance that he's actually not that effective in the beginning.
Definitely. I mean, rookie point guards, there's usually a pretty big learning curve.
Yeah, it's really hard to be effective as a rookie if you can't like really, really score. Like a lot of the guys that win Rookie of the Year, it's because they have something that they're really, really elite at. And I don't really see that with him. Best head coach.
Who do you think is the? Hold on, before we move on. Who do you think is the biggest steal? Who's somebody that you're looking at? Because they have an also receiving votes category where there's like a ton of guys. There's one that stands out to me, but who would you be?
So I think there's a couple answers to this question because there's going to be some guys.
Who's the biggest long run steal and who's the biggest steal? For
like next year could be a steal. I think the next year could be a steal is Kuminga. I think he's going to play for that team. I don't know. That sounds crazy to say that, but I think the roster gives him a chance to play. And when he's going to play with guys who force him to play the right way, or else he won't get on the floor. He's going to have a really good coach and really good players around him. If he doesn't play the right way, he's going to be in Santa Cruz or whatever their G League team is. So
he's going to play some Santa Cruz games if shit doesn't go right immediately.
Right. So I think maybe that situation should force him into being good. I mean, Mobley is the one long term because he could be the number one player in the draft and you get him at 3. Let's try to think of somebody later on though. Who's a guy?
Jared Butler is the one that I'm looking at. I just think that he does enough things on both ends and has the experience. He played for a really good college coach that he can help a team that's trying to win games.
Yeah.
I think he is a perfect fit for them. Like if he comes in and plays off the bench, they can play him with Conley as kind of like a secondary guy, playing with Mitchell as like a secondary ball handler. They're not going to ask him to like run the offense. He's a pretty good shooter. He's going to help you on defense, and he's just smart. He's one of those guys that's just smart and he's not going to make a ton of mistakes, I don't think.
Yeah, your guy Trey Murphy too with the Pelicans could really be a guy who could help this year because he can make threes.
Yeah, he looked good the other night. He scored like 18 points the other night. He just makes sense to play with Zion. That was my whole thing. Is like he's like the perfect 4 in today's NBA. And when you're drafting from 7 to 15, you're hoping to God you get a rotation player. If you go back and look, I did this exercise. 7 to 20 is just if you get a rotation guy, like that's a freaking win every single time. If you get somebody who is their 7th best player, that's a win. And to me, he is the type of player who he's not going to be your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th best player on a team. But he's the exact prototype for the type of player that I want to have as like my bench 4. Because you can play him. You can play him. He will help you.
Kispert could be another guy. Getting him at 15,
yeah.
He could be definitely a rotation guy where you'll look back and be like, oh, that was a really good pick. That was a good long run pick. This is a guy who started, 100 games in 3 years for us, right? Like he just played a lot of games, did a lot of good things, played the right way, and made a lot of threes. I like that. There's some bad names on this list, but I don't mind it. I think there's a lot of guys out there. The hard part with the long-term guys is that one of the top 3 picks is probably going to be good just by chances. So whichever one of them is the best pick, that's probably the answer because that's just they'll probably have them. They'll be the most effective in the draft. But we'll see how that breaks out. This is my favorite one. I am a large homer for the Miami Heat. Eric Spoelstra voted best head coach behind Monty and Quinn, 2 guys that
resoundingly.
Yeah, by a lot. I love it. I think he's amazing. I watched Miami night to night on League Pass. It's so fun because he's such a good coach, and you can see it when you watch the games. I think Monty's a good coach too. He's clearly had a really good, a really big impact on that team last year. And Quinn, just like you talked about, we hit on that. He has a huge reason for why we bet them last year and going to bet them again this year. But it makes me so happy. Spo is a mastermind. He gets a lot out of his players, and I really am going to bank on that this year because they have a really talented roster. If they can stay healthy, mix it with the best coach in the league, that's going to be an over.
I agree. I think he's the best coach game to game. He's just really, really good. Yeah. He gets a lot out of it. He finds ways to use the bench guys in ways that make sense for them. Like Max Strus is had no business playing in the NBA, and Spoelstra found a way to make him useful. 2 things stand out to this when I look at this list to me. Monty Williams being 2nd after being fired at his last job.
Yeah, it's not.
He had a good season, but is he the 2nd best coach in the NBA? That's a stretch.
That was a little recency bias, yeah.
That's big time recency bias. And Steve Kerr didn't get a vote. That team was 3rd in defense last year with an absolute shit show of a roster. He has 3 freaking titles. Give him his respect. Give him some freaking respect. He's got Quinn Snyder hasn't won shit. They've won a lot of regular season games and they've choked repeatedly in the playoffs. Steve Kerr's got 3 titles. I know the rosters are different, blah, blah, blah. 3 championships, and he drug that team to a top 5 defense with literally no one last year. Put some respect on Steve Kerr's name.
I think Steve Kerr's going to be live for Coach of the Year this year. A bet that we'll probably talk about next week. That team.
If Steve Kerr coached the Suns last year, that's the same team. That's a finals team. Come on.
Yeah, it's not any different at all.
Yeah.
Last one I want to hit on. Let's stay in the coaching. New head coach impact. This is an easy answer, I think. Rick Carlisle, right?
Yep. I think he's by far the best head coach that got a new job. We know nothing about Mosley or Unseld. Udoka, he has a pretty good roster, and he came highly regarded, but I don't know. He's never been a head coach before. Jason Kidd was a disaster in Milwaukee with a really good roster. Phillips has never been a head coach. To me, this is easy. Carlisle's the type of coach who probably could have got a lot of jobs. So the fact that he picked Indiana, makes me think he sees this roster has a potential to be good, and it does. It's a good roster. I took them over. They have a lot of health questions, but Carlisle, unfortunately for him, was going to get that Bucks job if they lost that Game 7. he was going to be the Bucks head coach, and now he coaches the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, he's had so many years in the NBA, but yeah, that was a tough break for him to end up in Indianapolis. But maybe it'll help with taking some pressure off him and getting out of the main media spotlight. I like that spot for him. That roster is pretty good. They compete on a night-to-night basis, and he definitely should help that. We'll see how their Miles Turner situation ends up, but that's a conversation for another day. Anything you want to hit on before we end the show?
What's just one team that you're like most looking forward to watching on League Pass this year?
Oh, let me look at the list before I make this, because this is a big deal, because this is a night-to-night thing. I've been a big Hornets guy in the last couple of years. I watched a lot of their games last year. But I think my answer would probably be the Wizards.
Yeah, it's an interesting team. Like, I just don't know what to expect of. You put that many decent role players on a team, and it's like, how does the coach and those guys figure out how that all fits together?
Yeah, that answer is not like, what's my favorite team to watch. That's the team that, like, when you have nothing to do and you go, oh, I'll just watch a Wizards game because it's interesting to watch some of these guys play, right? Like, when you watch the Lakers, right, you know what's going to happen. Like, that's just, you get LeBron and Anthony Davis. Like, that's just who it is. Right. So it's a little bit different. That's how I kind of was last year with the Hornets. Even the year before that, they're kind of that team that, they like seem to compete every single night, which is a big thing. That's like where the Pelicans go wrong. It's like the Pelicans just like lose every game. That they seem to be losing every game. So that's why I don't like to watch them. How about you? What's your team?
I mean, this sucks because I don't think we can watch it where we live, but the Grizzlies would be my team. I just want to see Ja like on a night-to-night basis. I think we're blacked out of them still. I think I am in Springfield. I think I'm still blacked out from the Grizzlies probably. The other team would be the Pelicans because Zion is just a freak, and seeing him take the step he made last year and see if there's another step that he can take, like, holy shit, what does that look like?
Yeah, the Mavs,
and their coach was so bad last year that maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Yeah, the Mavericks too. I think the Mavericks will be fun to watch. They'll be on the national TV a lot though with Luka, so that won't really qualify as a League Pass team. But when you have a player that good, it's always nice to see him play night to night because he's a guy where you're going to look back and be like, oh, I watched the NBA night to night whenever Luka was in his prime, right? Like that's something you say later on in life. So he's that type of player. It'll be interesting. Very interesting season coming up. I'm so happy we get back to an 82-game season because now we'll have a better idea of how these teams are performing, health going into the end of the year. Fans, hopefully, you and I can get to a game here soon. We haven't been to one in a long time. Maybe we haven't been to a game since we saw Kobe, right? Yeah, Kobe in Memphis.
We'll have to go over and see the Pacers play. I think that being an Eastern Conference team, they'll get some nice games. They have a nice arena, and it's not as expensive to go into Chicago.
Yeah. That'll be fun. So we have a lot of research to do before next week.
And
award.
I've been misinformed about the start date of the NBA. We will be back next Thursday, 7:30, because the NBA doesn't start till the 19th. Next Thursday, the 14th. I had my days mixed up, so we'll be back same time next week. Props, Coach of the Year, MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. Any other random bets that we see, some player props, obviously, if the books will start posting those. These are my favorite. I love the player props. Anytime the book really gives me some, I can just sit there and pick through those for hours and hours and hours, and I've had some good success with it. So I'll be really looking forward to sitting down and diving through that.
Yeah, these are deep dives too. These are like informed picks. These are not just like who we like. We research this. We try to put a little bit of thought into why we're picking them. Not only their number, right? Like not only their chances, but also their value. So we're gonna have a lot of information. It's gonna be a huge show, a really good send off into the season.
We've put a lot of time into these picks the last couple of years. We've kind of we've got some formulas, I suppose is what you want to call it, or we've put a lot of time into thinking like what things matter for certain types of awards, particularly like most improved in coach and in six man stuff like that. We've put a lot of time into what types of things it looks like. So I think that we came close last year. There were some weird winners there, but we have good process, and That's what we like. We're process oriented.
Yeah, I got screwed out of Michael Porter Jr., but that's a conversation for next week.
Same, and we had Doc and Tyronn Lue as Coach of the Year. Freaking Sixers were the 1 seed, and he didn't win. So it's like, what are you gonna do?
Right. But yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week. We'll check out. We made some golf picks this week. Hopefully they come through this weekend. We'll be back next Wednesday with some more golf picks, and then Thursday for our last NBA Futures show before the season starts. We may make some periodic NBA hops on just, when we feel like, maybe making some picks throughout the season. We'll see how that goes. This has been fun, and I'm really looking forward to next week.
Yeah, let's do it. A lot of research between now and then.
Yeah, peace out.
See ya.